Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, Cherie and I actually started our initial work together at this conference in San Diego at this women's retreat. So the minute I met Cherie and she started telling me about all this work that she does with PTSD, there was like this little, it was just like a feeling, like an intuitive ding of like, I feel like this is the woman that's going to help me get to the root of everything, that I've been like knowing that there's something there and not able to touch it. Like this is who I'm like meant to meet to help me do that. So immediately in meeting her, there was this like instant level of trust, and I was ready to go there. And I think there was a bit of apprehension from more of my logical reasoning self, especially hearing some of the techniques that we use in terms of like going, you know, kind of time traveling or going back into these loops of trauma, and not really being I wasn't really sure of what that would entail, or like how I would feel going through that experience. But I knew that I also had to try something completely different than I've ever tried, because nothing else has worked. So I think I was in a very receptive place. And that's also what enabled me to really dive in very quickly when we started this work. So essentially, you know, I went to Cherie's room. We had a really safe space set up in her hotel room. And I would like to say that this is the one and only time that Cherie and I have actually done this work in person. So every other session that I've done with her has been through video chat or over the phone. This is the one session that we actually got to do in person, but I do feel that in-person session allowed us to build a level of trust going into the subsequent work. And so essentially, you know, she kind of gave me a rundown of how the session would go, and that I would essentially be in almost like a meditative space. We set a sacred safe space, called in any sort of guides, supporters from alternate realms to really hold a safe place for us. And, you know, Cherie made herself known that she was just there for me the whole time. And, you know, whether that was just sitting with me or having a hand on my hand on my shoulder, just knowing that her presence was there with me the whole time, allowed me to let go to where the work could be more effective. So once we get, you know, taking some deep breaths, really relax the body, and from there, you know, it was just like all of a sudden I entered this kind of alternate realm of consciousness within myself, and very quickly my like 8-year-old self just showed up, and it was like I was in this space with her and I was physically there. Like I knew where I was, obviously. I knew consciously where I was in the world and my body, but like I felt my whole energy, my whole self travel into this loop with this young girl that was me, and seeing her so clearly and feeling her presence, and like seeing my backyard that we were in, the house that we were living in at the time. And just like, you know, it's like all my senses were alive in the experience, and I felt myself fully there. And through that integration, as I was in this kind of super conscious space with my 8-year-old self, is, you know, Cherie guided me through a conversation with her. So she gave me questions to ask her, helped me to kind of know what would help this young girl to feel more comfortable in answering the questions, for me to establish trust with this part of myself that had just been locked away for so long. And it was in that very first integration that that I found out like what had happened to me. And I just the minute that I was able to pull her back into my body, we did an exercise to essentially reconnect this missing piece of my energy with my energy now, my adult energy. And as soon as that happened, I cried like I've never cried before. It was like one of the biggest releases, the biggest reliefs I've ever had, to kind of finally know, to not be in this dark place anymore of like, why do I feel so messed up? Like, why can I just not operate in the world? Why can't I get over this? And all of a sudden everything was made so clear, and yet it also hurt, and I felt a lot of pain, and I felt a lot of sadness for that as well. And so I think these tears were all wrapped up in a sense of relief and release and sadness and anger. And then I was just there again. I was in my body. I was in the room with Cherie, and she was holding me, and I was able to let go of something in that one instant, that one moment, that I had been holding on to for like 20 years. So, and I would say just about every subsequent meeting after that kind of went that way for a couple of months. But just even in that first experience, I felt this huge weight off of my chest, and just this ability to actually know what had happened finally, and to be in a place of getting to move forward instead of acting from that past space. And all that happened in just one go. And we were able to go into another bubble. I was able to do about, in that same session with her, we went back in. I was able to touch base with my 12-year-old self as well, reintegrate her. And all of this took about maybe like an hour, a little over an hour, to go through all of this. And then after that, I was very tired. A lot. I was tired and raw and open and very vulnerable and super unsure of like how to process everything that had just come up. And I would say that was the most challenging part, was not really the apprehension around what's going to come up, the apprehension of, okay, this comes up, now what do I do? Like, what do I do with this information that I just received that I haven't remembered for 20 plus years? How do I actually move forward now that I know this? And that was the hardest part. It was actually stepping up after that. It took me a few weeks to really reach out to Cherie and be willing to move forward from it, because I was in a place of denial, and I think that's very normal. So, and Cherie helped me to know that as well, that it was normal to feel that denial and to be really unsure of the memories that were coming back, and to know that it's okay, and we can take as much time as needed to feel comfortable in moving forward.